Prohibition began on January 16, 1920, when the 18th Amendment went into effect. Federal prohibition agents were given the task of enforcing the law.
We must enforce the law of prohibition. We have to crack down on the criminal activity, otherwise we'll just have chaos.
In 1919, many women, mostly the Women Christian Temperance Union, had been a part of bringing about the national prohibition in the U.S.
We as a temperance union need to fight against alcohol. Prohibition is the only way to help protect our children, our families, and other women from alcohol abuse. So I support Prohibition 100%, as should you.
Even though the sale of alcohol was illegal, you were still able to purchase alcohol at speakeasies and other underground drinking establishments. Patrons often said you could get a glass of liquor at any building on 52nd Street between 5th and 6th Avenue in New York City. That is, as long as you had the password. Speakeasies could get its owner a lot of money, but it also took a lot of money. One New Yorker said they got over $13,000 per year, but $400 of that was graft money and went to federal prohibition agents and police officers. The cop would get an extra $40 to turn his back whenever beer was being delivered to a speakeasy. Many places had alarms that would go off in case of a raid. In addition to speakeasies, Americans also came up with other ways to get around the law. They used hip flasks, false books, coconut shells, hot water bottles, and garden hoses to transport the liquor. Another way people got around the law was to use doctors. You could get a prescription from a medical doctor, but the label warned that it was strictly for medical purposes. Doctors freely wrote prescriptions, and drugstores filled them without any question.
Hey, can you prescribe me something?
Yeah. Inhale. Okay. You can give you a prescription, but not for alcohol, because you're actually sick. There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate your help. Subscription, maybe. After you prescribe this to me. Oh, alright. Thank you.
Harding kept the White House well stocked with bootlegged liquor, but as a senator he voted for prohibition. Over time, people drank illegally, and the money ended up in gangsters' pockets. One of the most famous gangsters was Al Capone, who with bootlegging was able to build his criminal empire. Al Capone was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1899. When he was 22, he was recruited by Johnny Torero, a bootlegger in Chicago. Capone's job was to persuade speakeasy people to buy Torero's illegal alcohol. Within 3 years, Capone controlled 161 illegal drinking establishments. Capon developed the policy of killing his competitors. In the 1 year, there was 130 gangsters murdered in just one district. This included the famous St. Valentine's Day Massacre. On February evening in North Chicago, 7 well-dressed men were found. They had been lined up against the wall with their backs to their executors and shot to death.
Turn around! Ah!
The victims were mobsters with an endless supply of weapons and well known for their brutality. When the bodies were discovered splattered on the floor of the garage, it seemed at first glance that not one single person could have survived the force of their attack. However, this proved to be untrue when one investigator on the scene found Frank Gusenberg lying amongst the bloody corpse, breathing heavily and choking in his own blood.
We have a live one. We need to bring him to the hospital.
Before he laid his head back and died, he was asked for the identity of the killer. He simply stated, "I'll never talk."
Who shot you? What happened?
I'll never talk.
He's dead.
Few of the murderers were arrested and convicted of their crimes. Gangsters like Al Capone were able to use their money to bribe police officers. It is estimated that by 1929, Capone's income from the various aspects of his business was $60 million from illegal alcohol, $25 million from gambling, and $10 million from various other rackets. It is claimed that Capone was employing over 600 gangsters to protect his business from rival gangs. Capone openly admitted how he had been obtaining his wealth.
People sentence you to 11 years. Do you have anything to say to the court?
I make my money by supplying a public demand. If I break the law, my customers, who number hundreds of the best people in Chicago, are as guilty as I am. The only difference is that I sell and they buy. Everybody calls me a racketeer, but I call myself a businessman.
Unable to obtain the evidence to convict Capone of murder, in 1931 the authorities decided to charge him with tax evasion. Every passing year, the number of repeal organizations and demand for repeal increased. In 1932, Franklin Roosevelt ran for president, promising to repeal of federal prohibition laws. By this time, estimated 46 states favored repeal. In 1933, the legislation of state ratified the 21st Amendment. It repealed Amendment 18 and prohibited only violations of laws that individual states had in regard to intoxicating liquors. Federal prohibition laws were then repealed. Not all states were lucky. Some continued prohibition within their jurisdiction. By 1966, all states had fully repealed their state-level prohibition laws.